Okay, welcome to section 2 of the Never-Ending World. And section 2 is the Prophet Zephaniah and the Day of the Lord is at hand. And we're going to talk about two things. The first thing I want to point out is the Bible as a history book. And the second thing we're going to talk about is the Day of the Lord is at hand. And what does this mean? And really what we're going to do is we're going to compare the language of the prophet Zephaniah in the Old Testament during the first destruction of Jerusalem and how everything transpired within one generation of what the prophet said. And then we're going to go to the apostles and Jesus, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at the language they used, the terms they used, and show you the similarities between them. And the first thing we're going to do, though, is I'm going to make a correction. I noticed that there was a typo. If you watch the introduction video, when I showed you the first century timeline, in the section 8 part, the daily sacrifice is taken away, I had the wrong Josephus quote. So don't go by that. Look at this one. And again, this is going to be covered in much greater detail down the road, but if you want to know when the daily sacrifices were taken away, because when Jesus, in Matthew 24, when Jesus says, "When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand." Okay, so then when we go to Daniel, and he talks about the abomination that makes desolate set up. Okay, so something's going to happen in the temple, an abomination, something that pisses God off, is going to happen in the temple, and it's going to cause the destruction of Jerusalem. It's going to make everything desolate. And it has to do with the daily sacrifices being taken away. So we have to find the moment in history when the daily sacrifices were taken away. And then Daniel says, now count these days, right? So there shall be 1,290 days. But then it says, blessed is he that comes to the 1,335 days. Okay, so there's like 45 days added to this 1,290 days. And when we go to the Josephus calendar, okay, so Josephus records that they saw some crazy apparition, thunderous voices. They saw a heavenly army in the sky surround Jerusalem. The temple gates were blown open. There was a comet falling. Stars were falling over Jerusalem. There was some crazy supernatural event that took place in the Passover right before the daily sacrifices were taken away. And Christians are being massacred during this period. Okay, so this is probably at the height of Christian persecution and Christian slaughter. And then when the Jews take away the daily sacrifices to the Gentiles, okay, what happens here is the Jews stop their sacrifices to Caesar and remove the daily sacrifices of the Gentiles. Non-Jews, this is against the commandments of Moses. Non-Jews cannot make sacrifices to the God of the Bible. And this is also the marker that starts the Roman-Jewish war. So Jesus says, go to Daniel, and when you count the months, 43 months, and you come to the 1,335 day mark, Judea is completely destroyed, filled with blood and fire, filled with death. And then when you get to the end, right, and this is the Christian persecution, and when you get to this mark, Jerusalem is now fully surrounded, and the Jews are about to get their final blow. All right, so when the daily sacrifices are taken away, when the Gentiles, the Gentiles are no longer, the Jews say only Jews can worship God, and we're not sacrificing to Caesar anymore. And Jesus pretty much says, get out of Judea. When you see this event happen, leave, run, flee. And within 7 months, the Roman army is there, and it's absolute destruction. And anyways, we're going to cover this in great detail in the future. But for now, we're going to talk about the prophet Zephaniah The day of the Lord is at hand. And the first thing I want to point out, and this is going to be a long section, I want to just really show you how amazing the Bible is written. Okay, we're just going to look at this first part before we get into this. And the word of the Lord, which came unto Zephaniah the son of Cushai, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah, in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah. So what do we notice? We notice that the Bible writers are writing like historians. They're telling you who they are, who their parents were, which kings were ruling during their reign. Okay, they're trying to give you as much information as possible. It's not like today, where we have this universal system, okay, where we have this like Julius Caesar really revolutionized the Roman calendar, and over the millennia, we now have a very standard way for us to keep records of history. This did not exist in the ancient world. So these guys are writing in a way, they're giving us markers to tell us when these events took place in history. And you're going to notice the Quran is not written like the Bible. The Quran never says, I, Muhammad, son of Abdullah, in the 5th year of King Heraclius of the Byzantine Empire, and then gives a prophecy of something that's going to happen. Muhammad is kind of a prophet without a prophecy. Okay? It's not written like this. It's a completely different book, and to me, it's really incoherent. And it's just organized from the largest chapters to the smallest chapters. There's no chronology to it. It's not written like the Bible. The Bible is trying its best to give you, the reader, historical markers to prove when these people were writing. So we're going to see this all throughout the Bible. And it came to pass in the 5th year of King Rehoboam that Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. We're going to see this again, 2 Kings. You're going to see this all throughout the Bible. Okay, the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up and fenced the cities of Judah and took them. In 1 Chronicles 5, you're going to have that God. See, and look, the God of Israel stirred up. So who's bringing the destruction into Israel? Is it Satan? Is it Lucifer? No, God is the one who stirred up the Assyrians, Pul, king of Assyria, and Tilgath-Pilnessar, king of Assyria. And then they punished the Israelites and carried the Reubenites, the Gadites, and these are the people of Gilead, and these are the first people who were taken into Assyrian captivity, and many of them went into Media, and we're going to talk about a lot about the Persian Median kings in a moment. Isaiah, okay, in the year that Tartan came unto Ashdod, when Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him, and 2 Chronicles 35. Josiah, now what do we notice? This is the king Zephaniah is talking about. So here we have a marker. Had prepared the temple. Necho, the king of Egypt, came up to fight against Carchemish by Euphrates, and Josiah went out against him. So now we have Josiah. We have a king of Egypt named Necho, and a battle event. And this is a very famous battle, the Battle of Carchemish. It really decided the future of the world. Okay? And what do we notice is we can go to secular archaeological records, and we can go, yeah, you know what? When the Bible talks about these kings, we actually know they existed. Okay? We've got records of them. We've got writings from them. And the Bible is putting them exactly into the Bible timeline, and it matches secular history. Okay? So this is why I love the Bible, and you won't find this kind of writing in the Quran, but you will find some problems. Okay, let's go over a problem, and we'll see how we can resolve it. Now, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came unto Jerusalem and besieged it. Nebuchadnezzar is going to be the king that destroys Jerusalem, which is going to be connected to Zephaniah. But here are two problems. In the 1st year of Belshazzar, what's the problem there? There was never a king of Babylon named Belshazzar. Is the Bible wrong? Okay. So in the 1st year of Darius, Okay, the son of Ahasuerus. Now, Ahasuerus is how the Bible translators seem to write the name Xerxes. Okay, and this Darius, son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes. Okay, now the problem here is there is no record of there ever being a Darius that ruled before King Cyrus. Okay, so now when we come to Daniel and Belshazzar and the writing on the wall, so this is a very famous story where the Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, has a big feast. Imagine like at the White House, Buckingham Palace, all these elites. Imagine these elite parties, probably full of drugs and prostitutes and just debauchery and all that nonsense. That so Belshazzar's having this grand feast, it's big, just sin bin, and a hand comes on the wall and pretty much spells out, you're doomed, right? But he didn't know what it meant, so he called all the wise men. What does it mean? What does it mean? And of course, Daniel comes along and reads it to him and tells him that God is going to destroy your kingdom and give it to the Medes and the Persians. So, what do we do about this king that doesn't exist? Well, thanks to archaeology, the cylinder of Nabonidus. Nabonidus was the last king of Babylon, not Belshazzar. Right? So what happened was when we found the cylinder of Nabonidus written in ancient cuneiform, discovered in 1854, it explains that Nabonidus left Babylon to go rebuild temples and try to gain favor of the gods because of the rising Medo-Persian threat. And he left his son Belshazzar. Belshazzar is mentioned on this cylinder. And he left his son Belshazzar to rule as king. And then when we read Daniel, after he interpreted the handwriting on the wall, that Belshazzar then clothed Daniel with scarlet, put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. Now, why didn't he make him the second ruler of the kingdom? Because Belshazzar was the second ruler of the kingdom. His father, who wasn't in the capital, who was away, he was either at this point in Haran or he was in Arabia. And so where we think there's a biblical error, we actually have biblical precision. We have, and imagines, okay, so someone claiming that the Bible is just an invention written by Romans and Greeks and Jews in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th century, whatever, they would have had to have known this history that we just uncovered recently. There was no king of Babylon named Belshazzar, but there was a prince ruling as king, and this is why Daniel could only be made the third ruler of the kingdom. This is frightening precision in biblical history. The precision, the accuracy in the Bible's history is something that the guys fabricating, if they were fabricating the Bible, man, were they good. Man, did they know their ancient history. So let's keep going. So again, Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, here's Nebuchadnezzar, real king. Belshazzar, we now know, may not have been the king, but definitely was ruling as king because his father Nabonidus was out of the country. So when we find a biblical error, it doesn't mean the Bible's wrong. It's a mystery. It means we have to work a little harder and try to solve it. Now, this mysterious Darius the Mede. And there are no records of this Darius, the son of Xerxes, okay? And when you read Daniel, it doesn't say Cyrus the Great took over Babylon. It says this Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. All right, so what's the problem here? This isn't Darius the Great. Daniel was already dead by the time Darius the Great was ruling. So who's this Darius, or in Persian, this would be Dariavash. Okay, who is this Darius or Darius? But now we've got a couple other verses, okay? So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius, and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Now notice the difference. Darius the Median, the Mede, and Cyrus the Persian. And when you read this to me this is saying that Darius and Cyrus are ruling at the same time. Okay? And when you actually read the passage a little closer, in the first year, Darius the son of Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over what? He was only made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. The Bible never calls this Darius the Mede the king of Persia, like he does the other Darius. We're going to see that later on. So whoever this Darius is, he's a Median. And when you know Medo-Persian history, this actually makes a lot of sense. And we're going to talk about this, okay? So we're going to go over a little bit of Medo-Persian history, and we're going to talk about how amazing really this empire was. And so here's the Medes in the center, and Media was a big, vast country, okay? Their capital was Ecbatana, and the last king of the Medes, where it was an independent kingdom, was Astyages or Astyages, and he was known as a mad king. He is recorded as really a crazy king, really evil king. And what do you notice? You notice that Media is here, and where's Persia? It's in the south. It's actually in the mountain regions, okay? And it's in Elam, okay? And actually, this province, this is still called Elam to this very day. And in the Bible, what does the Bible say? The children of Shem, Elam was the first son of the Semites, and he populated this region, which is why it's called Elam. And Cyrus was the king of Anshan in the province of Elam, and he was a Persian. He wasn't a Mede. And now the Medes and the Persians, they don't get along. Okay? The Medes are the upper class. Okay? And the Persians are these mountain people, nomadic tribes. They're looked down upon by the Medes. Okay, they're like second, third class citizens to the Medes, and you'll learn that by reading Herodotus in the story of Cyrus. Okay, so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about Astyages, the Mad King. All right, so how the story of Cyrus goes: the Mad King had a dream, and in his dream he saw his daughter. And from her womb grew a vine that, I guess, entangled Astyages and the empire. And when he called the Magi, his wise men, they told him, "Oh, well, this means that your daughter's son is going to rule the world. Is going to rule, conquer you." So what does he do? Now, Astyages was married to a princess of Lydia. You have two kingdoms, Lydia and Media, and Lydia is a very wealthy kingdom, probably the wealthiest kingdom in the world at this point. They invented double-sided coinage. The coin systems we use today was invented in Lydia, and you'll get like King Croesus. You'll get a lot, rich like Croesus, and he was a king of Lydia. Anyways, the Lydians were master goldsmiths. And he was married to a woman from Lydia. So his daughter was half Lydian, half Median. So what does he do after this dream? He purposely marries his daughter off, not to some Median noble. He purposely marries her to the lowest class, the Persians. The guys in Elam, who spoke a different language. They didn't speak Aryan. They had this weird mixture language. They weren't like the Medes, okay? They are this weird mix of Semites and Aryans. And that's what the Elamites are. And that's where Cyrus is going to come from. And so in order to prevent this child from rising up above him, he knows that no Median noble in their right mind will ever follow a Persian into battle. Okay? They have no respect for the Persians. So he marries his daughter off to this low class king in the outskirts of his kingdom. And then then as she's pregnant, he has a second dream. And the dream is that some kind of liquid, I don't know, some say urine, some say water, poured out of his daughter and flooded the world. And when he called the wise men, the magi, come tell me I had this crazy dream, they said, "Oh yeah, it's for sure. Your grandson is going to conquer your kingdom and take over the world." So he orders his prime minister that the moment this child is born to have Cyrus killed. Okay? So after Cyrus is born, his mother now so think about this. Cyrus is 1/4 Mede, 1/4 Lydian, and half Persian. So he's only 1/4 Median. Okay, and the other quarter are the Lydians, which are the enemies of the Medes, and he's half Persian, which is the lowest breed, the outcasts of the Median Empire. So he still orders this baby to be killed, and the prime minister, who doesn't want royal blood on his hands, gives the job to, and this is just the legends, this is just the story of Cyrus according to the Greeks. He gives Cyrus over to a man named Harpagus. He's the prime minister. And Harpagus gives it off to a shepherd, the royal shepherd, and says to him, "You kill this baby. Because he doesn't want to have royal blood on his hands, and in case she discovers, the princess discovers he killed him, then he's a dead man, and he doesn't want this on him." Now, how the story goes is that night when the shepherd was given this baby, his wife also gave birth, but the baby was a stillborn. The baby was dead, and the wife of the shepherd begged her husband, "Let me keep this baby. Give our dead baby to the prime minister. Our child will then get a royal burial, and I get to have a son." So the shepherd switches the babies. Cyrus grows up as a shepherd, shepherding sheep and cows for the Median king. And eventually Cyrus is discovered. When Cyrus is like 8 or 9 years old, all the children are playing, knights or something. They're all got swords and stuff, and Cyrus was made king. The boys made Cyrus their king, and one noble boy refused to accept Cyrus as his king. So Cyrus had him whipped, and all the boys grabbed this noble son and whipped him. And Cyrus was then brought, because he beat a noble kid up, he was brought before the king. And when Astyages saw this boy, he saw himself in this boy. He knew right away, this is my grandson. He saw the resemblance. And when he brought the magicians said, "Oh, you know what? You have nothing to fear. The prophecy's been fulfilled. The game that the boys played when the boys made him king, this must be the prophecy. You have nothing to worry about." So Astyages sent Cyrus back to Persia to go live with his mother and father. But then to punish his prime minister for failing, he took the prime minister, he had this grand feast, and he ordered all his nobles to come, but he took the prime minister's son, had him killed before the banquet, and then baked the boy into the pie, into the food, and then fed Harpagus, his own son and heir. So Harpagus sits down, the prime minister of Media sits down, and the king asks him how did he like his meal, and then reveals to everybody that you just ate your own son. That was your heir that you just ate. And Harpagus gracefully left the table and didn't show any anger towards the king, and actually got to keep his position as prime minister. Anyways, the point is, the king was insane. He was the kind of king that would kill his own nobles' children and feed them to him. He married his daughter off to a Persian because he knows how little the Medians think of Persians. And because of how crazy this king was, um, the Medians helped orchestrate a coup. But at the same time, how do you put a Persian on the Median throne? It's a really hard thing to do. So when we come to Persian history, the point is the difference between the Persians and the Medes, and how different, from speaking a different language to their culture was different. When you hear what we have is the Behistun inscription, and what you're going to find are three languages on it. And why do you find three languages? You're going to find the Median Aryan, the Persian, what we call Persian, okay, Medo-Persian. You're going to find Aryan. You're going to find Syrian Aramaic, okay, which was the lingua franca of the Medo-Persian Empire. Think about that. These are Aryans, but they're going to rule their kingdom with a Semitic language. Okay, why does Aramaic become such a big, powerful language in the ancient world? Why are books of the Bible written in Aramaic? Because these Aryans are actually going to use the language of the people they conquer as the language of commerce to rule their empire. Okay, so you're going to find three languages, and the third is Elamite, because it's its own language. Okay, and this is the language spoken by the Persian kings, not the Medians. So what we're looking at here, the Behistun inscription, this is actually Darius the Great, the third Persian king, and these are 10 rebels. One is at Darius's feet. See, Darius, or Dariavaush, is what you can call him. He killed Cyrus's youngest son, married Cyrus's daughter, and took the throne. And these rebels who rebelled against him are all being brought to him in chains. Okay? And he conquered and ended the rebellion against him after he pretty much stole the empire. And there's an inscription here, and it's thanks to a guy, I think his name's Henry Rawlinson. He was an officer in the East India Trading Company, the British East India Trading Company. And he's really the guy who went up here, copied these, and I think by studying the kings of Persia, was able to understand and decipher cuneiform. Now, cuneiform, I guess the Latin word would be wedges, because they wrote using a wedge system where, and it's not really an alphabet. Cuneiform is a system of writing where you can write many languages. You can write many. It's not like the Egyptian alphabet. It's a little bit different. And thanks to Henry Rawlinson, we deciphered, and he used the same tactics used by Jean-François Champollion to decipher ancient cuneiform. So thanks to them, we can now read what the Persians said. We can now read what the Babylonians were saying. We can do a lot now thanks to the Behistun inscription. Okay, so my point is, these little the Midians here and the little Elamites here in the south, the Persians did not have a big army, but they were tough people. They were horse people. The motto of the ancient Persians was ride hard, shoot straight, and always tell the truth. That's the motto of the Persians. And they're really an amazing people. And they were a hard people because of the hard climate, the hard mountains, and the harshness of the land. And they became a really tough people because of it. And when Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon, all the nobles wanted to actually move there. And Cyrus asked them a really hard question. And he said to them, hard lands breed hard men, and weak lands breed weak men. Which would you rather be? Would you rather be hard men who rule over weak people, or be weak people and have hard men rule over you. My point is, the Midians never would have followed Cyrus. It would have taken other Medes to vouch for Cyrus, and that's what you get actually in the story of Herodotus with Harpagus, and that the Median nobles kind of concluded that we'd rather have a Persian rule over us than this insane mad king who feeds our own children to us when he's mad at us. Okay, but Cyrus would have needed serious Median help to command the Median army. So when I read this, now understand a few things here. Again, this Darius the Median that took the kingdom is probably a Mede that was put in charge of the Median army. Okay? And if you notice, it says that Daniel never could have lived to see Darius the Great. Daniel would have died during the reign of Cyrus. Daniel would have been a very old man. But notice that this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus, as if they're kind of ruling together. And this Darius, the Mede, he's only ruling over a realm, the realm of the Chaldeans. He's not ruling as a Persian king, so never does the Bible call him a Persian king. Now let's read what Daniel says to him. Okay? And I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm, to strengthen him. Okay, so he wants to strengthen Darius the Mede. And this is what he says to him. And now I will show you the truth. Okay? Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. So now this is a Persians, not a Mede. It's not talking about Darius the Mede. He's not the king of Persia. And the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength and through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, and not to his posterity. So his children will not inherit. This Greek king that rises up his children will not inherit, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. Okay, so summarize this. Daniel's talking to this mysterious Mede, who's not the king of Persia. He's just ruling over the realm of the Chaldeans. And Daniel's telling him there's going to be 3 Persian kings. But this 4th Persian king is going to be rich, and he's pretty much going to piss off the Greeks. He's going to stir them up. He's going to anger the Greeks through his wealth. So what's Daniel talking about? He's talking about the 4th king of Persia, King Xerxes, and the great invasion of Europe. Okay? So here we have Cyrus the Great, Cambyses II, Darius the Great, and Xerxes IV. All right, and this is going to lead to Leonidas and the great 300 Spartans. This is going to lead to Themistocles, the great battle of Salamis, the Delian League. This is going to, the whole war between the Ionians and the Dorians, and this is where you're going to get Xenophon and Plato and Socrates and Aristotle. All these great people are going to come out of this era, and it's going to end with Alexander the Great, exactly as Daniel's telling this Darius, that 3 kings in Persia will stand. But this 4th one will be richer than they all, and by his strength his riches shall stir up the realms of the Greeks. And then a mighty king, right? And then his kingdom is going to be divided and broken according to the 4 winds of heaven, north, south, east, and west. And it will not go to his posterity. His children will not inherit his kingdom. And of course, when Alexander died, if you were standing in Israel, if you went north, you would run into the kingdom of Lysimachus. If you went east, you would run into the kingdom of Seleucus. If you went south, you would run into the kingdom of Ptolemy. And if you went west to Greece, you would run into the kingdom of Cassander. All right, so this is perfect history. And just because we don't know who this Darius the Mede is, There are no records of him. None that I found. But to me, in order for Cyrus, when you know the difference between the Persians and the Medians, even Alexander the Great was a Macedonian. He had he might have been the guy in charge, leading, but it was really like uh, an oligarchy. That's why Alexander was killed. Alexander was killed because all of a sudden he's been made Pharaoh of Egypt. He's been made king of Babylon, and all his generals, they were all pretty much equals. Alexander could not have conquered without the help of his generals and their soldiers, and which is why they killed him when he became too powerful. Okay? Now, we're going to just kind of look at where the Bible puts the Persian kings in a better order. Now, notice they're calling them the kings of Persia, right? And in this one little section of the Bible, in Ezra 4, this is when the temple's trying to be rebuilt, but the Jews are being prevented. And we're going to just read, and he hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose all the days of Cyrus, the king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, the king of Persia. So there's perfect order: Cyrus, then Darius the Great. Cambyses is missing. Now, Cambyses the second, Cyrus' son, had a very short reign. He died very mysteriously. He was successful. He conquered Egypt. He brought Egypt into the Persian Empire. He also brought Cyrene, Libya, Northern Africa. He also did that. But he died very mysteriously of a wound on his way back to the Persian capital to put down a rebellion, probably caused by Darius. And anyway, so he died very mysteriously, and he's not mentioned in the Bible. It just goes from Cyrus to Darius, but there is a Cambyses in between. And then you have Xerxes the fourth, right, who stirred up the Greeks and led the greatest invasion the world had ever seen, and the first invasion of Europe. And then it mentions Artaxerxes, right, and he's the guy who saved Themistocles. Themistocles, after Themistocles defeated the Persians, the Greeks wanted to kill him because he was gaining too much fame and power. So Themistocles had to run to the Persians for help. And who did he run to? He ran to Artaxerxes, right? So the Bible is, again, leaving us really great markers to help us understand ancient history. All right, so the Medo-Persian Empire, honestly, is one of the greatest empires that ever lived, and so much of what they built still exists in our world today. I'll give you an example. Our highway system, all right? If you want to use the roads, what do you have to do? You got to go apply for a driver's license. You got to get a permit, a piece of paper, a card with your face on it, to present to the authorities that you are allowed to use the roads. All right? So if you wanted to use the king's roads, you had to have a permit for that. You couldn't just use it. Okay? There were guards, there were police, and you had to present permits from the authorities saying you have the right to use the road. Way stations, okay? If you were doing trade in ancient Persia, they had way stations all along the Persian roads. So every time you crossed into a new territory, your goods would be weighed, and it has to match the last check that you did. Just like today when trucks are driving, so you need to have special permits. And they had a highway system, and our highway system today, our road systems with permits and way stations, all of this comes from ancient Persia. Okay, it's really these guys who started that. And one really cool thing I want to end on the Persians is the motto for the United States Postal Service, and that is neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. Now, it's the unofficial motto for legal purposes, because sometimes when the weather is bad, it does stop the postal service. They can't always be successful, so they can't legally actually use this as their motto. But this is the unofficial motto, and when you go to a lot of the postals, the big ones, the really nice postal U.S. postal buildings will have this motto engraved on it. Where do we get this from? We get it from Herodotus, right? Because it is said that as many days as there are in the whole journey, so many are the men and horses that stand along the road, each horse and man at the interval of a day's journey, and these are stayed neither by snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness, from accomplishing their appointed course with all speed. So the postal service that was invented by the Medo-Persians, okay, the postal service we use today, this is where it comes from. And the American Postal Service is using the motto from Herodotus that talks about how amazing the Medo-Persian postal system was, because one man just passed it on to the next and the message would fly across the kingdom as fast as possible. So anyways, that's my little spiel on just how we can use the Bible use the markers in the Bible to tell history, okay? And we're going to keep going with this a little bit more. We're going to look at the First Maccabees. Now, First Maccabees is not part of most Bibles. If you're a King James onlyist, the original King James did have these books. A lot of the books from the King James have been removed. So if you're a King James onlyist, understand that the King James Bible you're using today is not the real King James Bible. It doesn't have the Apocrypha in it, doesn't have the first book of Maccabees. These are very important books. And you're going to it mentions Alexander, the son of Philip of Macedon, and Darius, the last king of Persia, who Alexander defeated. Okay, Battle of Arbela. Okay, and so let's keep going. And it came to pass, this is Luke, so now we're in the New Testament. It came to pass that in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus. Okay, so we've got another marker in history, a guy that we can look at. Okay, Luke 3, this is a very good one. Now, in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea. And then it mentions Herod and the Tetrarch. When Herod the Great died, he divided his kingdom amongst his children, and they each got to rule a section. And here's the Bible mentioning perfect Roman history. Okay. And again in Acts, okay, who's it mentioning? It's mentioning Caesar Claudius. Okay. And so when we're reading the Bible, we need to look for these historical markers that are left to us. Okay, and again, you won't find this in the Quran. You won't find this. The Bible does an amazing job pinpointing real people at the right moment when they would have reigned and when they would have ruled. Okay? Now we're just going to look a little closer at this Luke 3, verse 1. Okay? Tiberius Caesar and Pontius Pilate being the governor of Judea. And when we go to Roman sources, so let's look at Tacitus, okay? And this is very important, okay? Very important. Tacitus is writing, he was born under the reign of Nero, okay? So this would be like someone who was born under, I don't know, during the like maybe someone like me who was alive and a young kid during the Bush era, okay? And as I grew up, I'm now going to write about the Bush era, I'm going to write about 9/11, I'm going to write about the events that took place in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, okay? And I really just have to talk to my parents or my grandparents or my neighbors. All the people who lived through these events are right next to me. Okay, it's like some 15-year-old kid who's investigating 9/11, right, in today's world. Tacitus is writing right out. He's born right like in the middle. He's born during Nero and was alive during the destruction of Jerusalem. He would have been a young boy. Okay, so he's right there. He's a direct source. And what he's writing about now, he's writing about Nero, the guy who he was born under, and he's talking about how Nero blamed the Christians here for the burning of Rome. And let's read how amazing Tacitus is, because Tacitus hates Christians. And we're going to see how this guy who hates Christianity, how his writings save us today as Christians. That we can look to this Roman who hated us with a passion, but thankfully, what he wrote saves us, proves our faith, proves that these people were real. So to get rid of the report that Nero burnt the city, he fastened the guilt, okay, and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations called Christians by the populace. Christus, so Christ, from whom the name had its origins, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius and at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate, okay, or Pilatus. Okay, and then let's continue. Read what he thinks about us. And a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world find their center and become popular. Does he like us? Does he like Christians? No, but what is he doing? He's validating, yeah, there was a guy named Christ. He was brutally killed under Tiberius at the hands of Pontius Pilate, exactly as the book of Luke says. So it's very important for us to know secular history. What do they say? And how to use the markers in the Bible to prove that the Bible is a trusted, accurate source. So now we're going to move to the main point. That was just me kind of going on a rant, something that I like about the Bible, how I read the Bible, things I look for when I'm reading the Bible. And I hope you guys can appreciate that too. I hope you learn something from that. And I hope that when it gives you a new way to kind of look at this book. Okay? So now we're going to read the whole thing. We're going to go through Zephaniah, and we're going to understand the day of the Lord is at hand. Okay? So the word of the Lord which came unto Zephaniah, the son of Cushai, the son of Gedaliah, son of Amariah, the son of Hizkiah, in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, the king of Judah. What do we know about Josiah? Pharaoh Necho II, Ethiopian Pharaoh ruling in Egypt, who fought at the Battle of Carchemish, was ruling during the time of Josiah. So we've got our markers. Zephaniah says, I will utterly consume all things from off the land, saith the Lord, Yehovah. I will consume man and beast. I will consume the fowls of the heaven and the fishes of the sea and the stumbling blocks with the wicked, and I will cut off man from off the land, saith the Lord. Is Lucifer doing this? No, God is the one doing this. I will also stretch out of mine hand upon Judah. Okay, I'll stretch out my hand upon Judah and upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and I'll cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, and the name of the Kamarims, and that's a word for idols, with the priests. So they're priests of idols. Okay, let's keep going. Hold thy peace at the presence of the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is at hand. Oh, the day of the Lord is at hand? For the Lord has prepared a sacrifice. He has bid his guests. And it shall come to pass that in the day of the Lord's sacrifice that I will punish the princes and the king's children, and all such as are clothed with strange apparel. In the same day also will I punish all those that leap on the threshold, which fill their masters' houses with violence and deceit. So God is going to punish wicked people, but the day of the Lord is at hand. Now, what does that mean? We're going to look at that word in Hebrew. So in Hebrew, we have the word karob, and in Greek, we have the word engidzio, okay? And both these words have the same meaning, and it means nigh, at hand, ready, short, or shortly, okay? It's approaching, it's coming. This does not mean 2,000 years in the future, okay? Now you got to remember, let's put things into context. Zephaniah is writing in the time of Josiah the king. Josiah the king is recorded as one of the greatest kings, if not the greatest king of Judah. It is a time of total prosperity. It would be like me back in the 90s, standing up and telling America and all the Americans and all the Canadians and all the British and all the people of the Commonwealth, our empire is going to be destroyed. America is going to be destroyed. They would all laugh at me. Impossible. Back in the 90s, we were at really our height, I would say. Okay? That is what Zephaniah is doing. Zephaniah is preaching destruction at the time of absolute prosperity under one of the greatest rulers of its time. So anyone who heard Zephaniah probably thought he was crazy. So, when the prophet Zephaniah says the day of the Lord is at hand, which era do you think he's talking about? Is he speaking, is he speaking to the people of his generation? Okay? About the destruction of Jerusalem, the first destruction of Jerusalem. Is that what he's talking about? Is it B? Is he speaking to the Jews during the first century and about the second destruction of Jerusalem? C, is he speaking to us in the present day world? And this is what you're going to find with a lot of Jews and Christians. They're going to quote the Old Testament, okay, and say that these things never happened yet. So I'm asking you, when Zephaniah says the day of the Lord is at hand, something's about to happen, who's he talking about? Okay. Well, what happened within his generation? The king's sons were all killed. So let's read Jeremiah. Then the king of Babylon slew the sons of Zedekiah in Riblah before his eyes. Also the king of Babylon slew all the nobles of Judah. Moreover, he put out Zedekiah's eyes, bound him in chains, and carried him to Babylon. Ezekiel writes, my net also will I spread upon him. And this is God talking, not Lucifer, not Satan. God is saying, my net also will I spread upon him, and he shall be taken in my snares, and I will bring him to Babylon, to the land of the Chaldeans. Yet shall he not see it, though he shall die there. Now that's an amazing prophecy, because how can you go somewhere and die there and not see it? Well, when you read Jeremiah, you understand why, because of how evil Zedekiah was and his treachery against Babylon, how he betrayed Babylon after Babylon made him king. Well, the last thing King Zedekiah saw was his sons were all butchered before his eyes, and then his eyes were taken out. That is brutal. Okay, so the answer is A. Everything that Zephaniah said when he said the day of the Lord is at hand, the destruction of Jerusalem, the death of the king's sons, all happened when he was living in the time of Josiah. One generation out, within that 40-year period, everything was fulfilled. The day of the Lord was at hand. Nobody believed it, but it was. So now let's look at some New Testament examples of the day of the Lord is at hand. And here we have John the Baptist proclaims the gospel. In those days, John the Baptist, preaching in the wilderness of Judea and saying, repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Is he talking about 2,000 years in the future? Is he talking to the people, in the Crusades, 1,000 years later? Is he talking to the people in front of him, that kingdom of heaven is at hand? John the Baptist is arrested. Now, after that, John was put in prison. Jesus came into Galilee, preaching the gospel of the kingdom of God and saying, the time is fulfilled, and the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent ye and believe the gospel. Now, is Jesus talking to us 2,000 years in the future? Now that John the Baptist has been arrested, right? Is this something happening rather soon? Christ predicts his crucifixion. And he said, go into the city to such a man, and say unto him, the Master saith, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. Now, is Jesus saying his crucifixion is about to happen? Because he's going to be arrested that night. Or is he saying, oh, no, this is a futuristic event. The time is at hand, but this is 2,000 years. No, it's going to happen very soon. So now we're going to look at the Apostle Paul, where he says, okay, so this is love is the fulfilling of the Torah. Okay, that love fulfills the Torah. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the Torah, okay, of the law. And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than we believed. For the night is far spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. So the Apostle Paul, the day of Christ is at hand. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that you be not shaken in mind or troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as the day of Christ is at hand. Okay, so this is very interesting. Paul's warning them, and he's telling them that this is coming soon. Okay, not to be troubled by whatever anyone's saying, anyone denying it, it's coming. The day is at hand. Okay. So the Apostle Paul speaking of his own execution, and he says, what does he say? For I am now ready to be offered sacrifice, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. All right. Now is Paul talking about his execution in 2,000 years, 2 years, 5? No, he's about to be executed. His time is at hand. Okay, so now when we come to like language in the book of Revelation, blessed is he that readeth, okay, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. Okay, so the book of Revelation, verse 1, chapter 1, verse 3, for the time is at hand. And again, at the end of Revelation, and he saith unto me, seal not the saying of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. It's about to happen. Okay? And again, we're going to just read 2 Thessalonians again. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be soon shaken in mind, or troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as the day of Christ is at hand. All right. So the question is, if the day of the Lord and the day of Christ were at hand during the time of Christ and the apostles, why do we assume that this is a future event that will take place 2,000 years in the future? Okay, and we're going to see that everything happened exactly like it did with Zephaniah when he was preaching, when Jerusalem and the Jews were at their height of prosperity during their independence, and then everything was destroyed. And what you're going to notice is when the Jews were at the height of power in the Roman Empire, if you were to preach the destruction of Jerusalem, they all would have laughed at you. Jerusalem was the most powerful city in the Roman Empire. It was the richest city, the most fortified city. Okay? The most trade of the world went through there. So, we're going to show you that when they say that the time is at hand, they're talking about everything will happen within this period. Okay, and that's what this is about. That's what we're going to prove to you, or what I'm going to try to prove to you. At least give you a really solid argument that you can use, that there's far more evidence that this already happened. Okay, so that's what this section was about, understanding that the day of the Lord was at hand during the time of Zephaniah, just like it was at hand at the time of Christ. And a lot of people will tell you that the book of Revelation was written, later. Let me tell you something about the New Testament. Every book in the New Testament had to have been written before the destruction of the temple. Why? Because not one book mentions the destruction of the temple. The temple is still standing in every book in the New Testament, and the prediction of its destruction is in the book of Revelation. Okay? Nowhere does Jesus say the temple has to be destroyed, rebuilt, and then destroyed again. Nowhere. Okay? The destruction of Jerusalem is the end of the Bible. Okay? And this is going to bring us to our third section, manuscripts and how languages change over time.